Hello, I'm Beth. Welcome to today's yin yoga practice for winter. In this practice, we're going to be doing repeated versions of fish pose, a back bend that we're going to do in a supportive way with a number of different variations. So in the winter months when we're cold, we kind of tend to close in on the front of our body, our shoulders roll forward, we form ourselves into a tight little ball. We might have restricted breathing and just kind of feel lower mood when we do that. By practicing these more front body opening poses, it will help us be more open to the cold winter months, be open to the new year, be open to change or whatever may come. So you will need some props for this practice. If you have a bolster, great. It could be either a rectangular bolster or a cylinder bolster. If you don't have a bolster, have at least one blanket, ideally several blankets to support yourself in the poses. We'll be using blocks for a few of the poses, and a pillow is optional to adjust the angle of your head, and I'll talk a little bit more about that during the practice. Let's get started for your first fish pose. So this is going to be a supportive fish using the bolster, or if you don't have a bolster, you'll be stacking several blankets and they'll be vertical on your mat. So I'm going to turn my bolster so that it's vertical, facing the same direction of my mat. If you're using blankets instead, you can see that this one blanket is about half the thickness of the bolster. That might be enough for you, or you could put another blanket on top of that. I'm going to move my blanket out of the way. I will have my pillow nearby because I might use it. So I'll turn around so that my back is toward the bolster. And different from if we were doing, say, a supported variation of a butterfly pose or bound angle, we're not taking the bolster all the way down to the base of our spine. We're having the bolster meet us right at the bottom ribs because we want a lift of our rib cage, of the front of our heart, of our collarbones. That is fish pose. So I'm going to find that spot for me. So there's some space under my lower back here. And then coming down, you can be right here with your head face the ceiling if you'd like. I find it's uncomfortable on my throat if my chin starts to tilt a little bit back. That, if you like that and you want that opening sensation, that could be an aspect of your pose. If that's not comfortable, take a small blanket, a towel, or a small pillow if you have one. Cradle your head on the pillow, and you'll see now I have just a little bit of tip toward my chin of the chest, which helps foster the relaxation qualities of this pose. Arrange your feet in any way you like. The traditional is feet stretched out long. You can also have your legs crossed or in some other shape. So we're going to be holding most of these shapes for about 3 minutes, and that's where we'll start with this initial yin posture. Now in yin, this might look like a restorative pose, but in yin we're looking for not just support, but stretch. So I am supported, but I'm beginning to feel a stretch across my collarbones, even down to my hip flexors. It's a mild stretch. We're starting off pretty mild. It may be stronger for you. And then once we find that kind of Goldilocks place for us, the place where we can feel the stretch and yet still be supported and comfortable in the other areas of our body, we start to allow ourselves to grow quiet. And then we stay for a period of time, which, as I said, is going to be maybe about 3 to 4 minutes in the fish poses. And we'll do a few other poses that we might not hold quite as long. As you can see, I'm dressed warmly today rather than in more traditional yoga clothing because we're staying still as we let gravity and the props do their work. may choose to add in an awareness of the breath, particularly noticing how the shape of this pose is allowing a widening across the collarbones, the upper chest, so feeling the breath in that area. Perhaps about 1 more minute in this pose. Anytime the sensation builds up to be too intense, change the pose so that it remains at a mid-level intensity for you. The goal of yin is to remain in our Goldilocks level of intensity, not too much work and not too much release. About 2 or 3 more breaths. And when you're ready to end your pose, you may wish to bend your knees. Use your hands, your arms to help yourself up to a seated position. We're going to be doing 3 total repetitions of fish pose. That was our first. In between each, we're going to be doing another pose, targeting a little bit more of the side body. The first is going to be side banana. It's kind of a version of banana asana that we usually do lying on our backs. So you can use this really with any version of your props. You can use it with the bolster, with the blankets, with the blocks. I'm going to start showing you with the bolster. This is probably the most intense version, and just because my bolster is pretty thick, so it's not going to be right for all bodies. And then I'm going to move on to the blanket and the blocks. So in this pose, our bolster is now horizontal on my mat, and it's going to be right under, somewhere under the rib cage, anywhere between basically the rib cage and the armpit, and you can arrange that to work for you. Now we come to lying over, and then the arrangement of our legs and the arrangement of our head, that depends on what works for your body. So one simple option is simply to put a hand here, support the head, and focus on the stretch along the side body, again, from about the armpit to the lower ribs. If you're not feeling much of a stretch there, there's a couple of things that you can try to adjust. One is to reach the top arm overhead, and you can keep it up there. You can support it on a block, you can support it on the top of your head. Another is to let your head come down to the floor, and again, with the bolster, this feels pretty intense because my head doesn't quite reach. So I can grab one of my props, like my block. So now I feel a little bit more intense stretch in the neck as I'm stretching the side. And again, I can reach the arm if desired. So not everybody may have a bolster. And again, that might feel too thick with the bolster. I'm going to show it both with the block and with the blanket. The blanket, same sort of idea as the bolster. You might have it folded, you might kind of take it into a little roll. If you're using the blanket, you could try putting your bottom arm forward, and then maybe your head is on the block at any height. Maybe it's on your pillow. Maybe in this version you can bring your head right down to the floor. Top arm can stay here, or it can go over your head. And the last version, if you've already found your version, stay right there, of course. The last version is going to be with a block, and I'll put the block on the lowest setting. You can use the block by itself. The block can feel a little harsh by itself, so I'm going to take my blanket and put my blanket right over the block, really just for a little bit of cushioning, and it'll also give me a little extra height. And then remember that that first version of this is just to support our head, and I think that's where I'm going to stay with this version today, but you can do any other version of placing the head that we've done so far. You can let it hang, you can prop the head under a pillow or another block. And then I have my legs bent. This just makes it a little easier for me to balance. If you prefer them out straight and long, it'll be a little bit more on an edge. It'll make it a little more challenging to balance, but that's fine. They can be scissored, so any way that you'd like your legs. And we'll start timing. We'll do about 2 minutes in this pose from here. So the reason why we're doing some poses to address the side body when we're trying to open across the chest and the front, because it's all connected, right? Our rib cage, it has this side parts, it has the little muscles in between them, the intercostals, all the muscles of the middle back that surround that, it's all attached. These side stretches can be nice because it's simply not an area we stretch as much. We do a lot of forward movements in daily life. In our yoga practice, we often incorporate back bends. Side stretches sometimes can get overlooked. If you'd like, close your eyes and really focus on feeling the breath, especially in the side of your body that's more toward the sky. Can you access more space? A wider breath in that area. One or two more breaths here. Place the top hand on the ground in front of you. Use both hands to help yourself slowly rise up. And we always want to come out of yin poses slowly because it might actually have been more intense than it felt lying in the pose. I'm going to move my block setup right to the other side. You could just flip over if you were facing me, flip over to face away from me without moving your prop setup at all. I'm going to stick with this version. I might experiment with, I have my pillow here, with putting my head down and lower it on this side, keeping an eye on our time. So arrange yourself again, anywhere from lower ribs to armpit. You're looking for your own Goldilocks level of stretch. And that's somewhere between, let's say, maybe 50% to 70% of your maximum. It's absolutely not your maximum. I'm going to start with the upright version to get a feel for this pose. I'll start timing here. You may notice we're stretching some smaller stuff in yin. So this is not a big muscle stretch. Getting into the tissues of the ribs themselves, the bones, the ligaments, the tendons, all of that stuff the fascia, the skin that overlies everything, kind of taking the big muscle groups out of it, or at least that's our desire, that's our goal. So if you feel, say, like a tension in your feet or contracting in your quads, any area where the big muscle groups are working when they don't have to, can you allow those parts to soften a little bit? Our aim is to be still the entire time, but if it turns out that I can't feel the sensation or I want to have a different sensation, I can try a different version of the pose, like lowering my head. That's not going to work for me, but if it works for you, you could do that. I'm going to stay right here for the last minute. Last few breaths in your side banana. As you're ready to leave the pose, again, use your hands as support, allowing yourself to move slowly out of the pose. Perhaps taking a moment in any position, a simple seated position or other position, to notice the effects, the lasting effects on your body. We call this the rebound in yin. We'll take our next supported fish pose. So I'll stay this way since I'm already this way. This time we're going to be using the blocks. And you won't need the bolster, you can sub the blanket for blocks, and I think you'll see how to do that pretty easily. You might want your small pillow for your head, again, to adjust the tilt of your head, especially if you experience dizziness when your chin is up and your neck is exposed as your head is tilted back. So the simplest version of this is just one block on its flat position, and it'll be behind the rib cage. So I'll show you that, but I'm going to grab my other block to use for this too. So same position where the block is about at the bottom tips of the rib cage. Lie back over the block. Knees can be bent or go straight. And then here, I know that this is probably not going to be the version for me, but if it's comfortable for you to take the head all the way back, you can. I definitely don't like that stretch. So either I would take a pillow and see how that is. This may work for some of you. It is an intense stretch on the front of your neck. Again, legs bent or straight. If you find that this works for you, you've got support under your back, stay there. You could also, if the pillow is too low, swap out the pillow for a second block, and then my head is a little bit more neutral, a little bit more upright. So stay there if you've found your pose already. I'm going to show you a second version, and this is actually my preferred version. So I'm going to take the block under my ribs on the medium height, and I will note that this can be either the same way we had it, vertically or horizontal toward your mat, or it can be vertically so it lines up right along your spine. I like practicing it both ways. I'm going to keep it horizontally right along my bottom ribs for now. I'm going to have my second block, and that one I'm going to put on my high height. That is going to be my pillow, because I know I like my head up a little higher. So coming into this version, again, I'll set up that first block. It's higher now, but it's really at the same place at the bottom of my ribs. I'm extending my legs, and then I'm finding the other block And my placement of the other block is right at the base of my skull, at my occipital lobes in my brain. And this gives me a slightest bit of a chin tuck, not too much, but I still feel a whole lot of opening here. Your arms can be by your sides at any arrangement. You might even choose to put them out. You move your props around in a little bit more of a T shape. So once again, we'll hold this pose for about 3 minutes, and we're starting that now. Remember to start to grow quiet and still in your body. As we find quietness and stillness in our body, we're encouraging, striving for opening to quietness and stillness in our minds. As in our first yin pose, we're stretching and opening across the entire front body, the entire upper chest, even into the lower ribs. You might even feel that lower than that down into your hip flexors. I also feel this across the front of my shoulders, the upper arms, my armpits. At any point in the pose, the position of your arms causes any tingling in your fingers. That's suggesting that you're irritating or pinching a nerve, and you simply want to move your arms to a new position until you're no longer experiencing that sensation. For the arms is resting right on your body, perhaps somewhere where you can feel the breath. You could put your hands on the side ribs. Enjoy your last few breaths in this pose. When you're ready to come out, you can push into your hands like we did before. You can also gently roll off the props to one side, remembering to slowly give yourself a little assist as you help yourself up. Take a moment. I know I'm starting to feel that. I'm feeling the echo of the props on my body. I'm starting to feel, I was pretty chilly before we started this practice. I'm starting to feel warmth and openness. So one more pose, one more side body pose, and it's also going to give us some front body opening, and then our last yin pose. So this is going to be a reclined twist. You can use any props from this. I'm going to move most of my things out of the way. I think I'll keep my blanket handy. And perhaps a pillow for under your head if you desire. You can also use the blanket and the bolster. I'm just shoving mine out of the way now. I'm gonna have a blanket on the side of my body. Blanket can also be in between your knees as we do a reclined twist. So I'm gonna set up a little bit to the left side of the mat. We'll be going right for the twist first. If you're using a pillow, you can arrange that under your head. Notice I don't have my hair bound because we're doing a lot of lying on our back. Draw your knees in. You can have a block or a blanket between your knees if you'd like. The simplest version of this twist is to scooch my hips over a little more, take both knees to the side. And then the openness comes from opening the chest toward the sky. Arms can be in a T shape or a cactus shape. And since I have these props back here, you might find that you want something to support your back arm. Quite right spot. Sometimes having your back arm be able to sort of settle and press into something can help with that openness along the front body, the upper body that we've been working in our fish poses today. The knees can be in any arrangement. Right now I have them about right out from my hips. You can tuck them in more toward your chest, and you'll notice that maybe changes where you feel the stretch in your back. You can also have them kind of a little bit more staggered either way. You can find sort of a windshield wiper version. They can be lower. I'm going to keep mine pretty stacked, and I think I'll take a block between my knees, and this just helps between my shins, and this just helps me keep that area a little bit active so my legs don't slide apart. And then we'll find our pose for, again, about 2 minutes here. Keeping my head looking toward the sky, so centered in my chest. You might choose to turn your head in one direction or in the other, depending on how your neck feels. In our fish poses, our lower body has been pretty passive today. There's really not a lot of stretch targeting in the lower body. In this reclined twist, you might feel the same opening in your upper body that we did in fish, but also a little bit of activation in the hips, maybe even around to the lower back, maybe the legs. And if you're less active in winter, you're sitting more. This is also a stretch that can feel nice on the body. All right, we'll start to finish up this pose with a few more breaths. To unwind to center. Generally like to take a moment before going from one side to the other. Reconnecting with my breath. And we'll set up for the twist on side 2. You can change up the props if you'd like. I think I will go ahead and use my bolster under my shins on this side, and maybe this time I'll use the blanket between the knees. So there's no need to do the pose exactly the same on both sides. Our body is different on each side. It might need something different. So set your props up first, find the position of your legs. Again, I'm going to slide my hips over a little bit, just making more space for moving my knees to the left. I like the bolster kind of under my shins. You might like it a little higher. So we fuss with the props at the start of the pose and really get ourselves into the shape that is going to allow us then to feel the stretch, and I feel stretches in various places, my hips, across my chest, especially this shoulder. Once I get that, then I want to let go. And then let my body release into that 2-minute hold on this side. Same as when we did the last fish pose or any of the fish poses, if the arrangement of your arms is starting to cause any tingling in your fingers, then place your arms in a new and a different position, ensuring that the tingling goes away. Find your last few breaths on this side. Start to unwind when you're ready. Again, find a moment on your back. These quiet moments in between poses give us feedback about our practice. They help us understand whether we've made decisions to go to the right intensity. If when you come out you feel a sense of release and relaxation, that was a good level of intensity. If you feel scattered or you feel anything contract, that might suggest that you went past that comfort zone, past that comfortable edge for you. So you can stay in your rebound, in your lying pose, while I talk about the setup for our last fish pose. If there was a version of fish that we already did that you loved and you know immediately that you want to go back to it, please do. I'm going to be showing one more version, and I'm going to do this version with the blanket. That's how I'll do my final pose because I know that's what I like, but I'm going to show it first with a bolster just in case anybody thinks that the bolster is the best choice for them. Move my other things out of the way, take my bolster over. As I said earlier, my bolster is pretty thick, so I know it's probably going to be too thick for me in this version of fish pose, but I'll give it a try anyway. So now, unlike the first version we did, the bolster is perpendicular to our mat. It's horizontal. It's still going to be going under the ribs, and I'm going to strive to get my arms, my shoulders over the ribs. And this is how I know this bolster is too thick. It might have worked a little better with my cylindrical bolster. And then I lie out this way. So this is going to give me a really extreme sending back of my head. I could support it higher. If you're in this place and your head is comfortably touching the ground or your support and you want to stay there over a bolster, go ahead. I'm going to swap it out. So moving my bolster out of the way, I'm going to grab my blanket. And your blanket, if you're using the blanket, can either be in a rectangle or it could be in a roll. I'm going to do kind of a thick rectangle, so sort of doubled or tripled up a little bit. Still under my ribs, that's always about the goal place for our fish pose. And now when I lie back over it, I can really comfortably get my arms above the blanket roll. And here I find my head comfortably comes to the ground, and I actually don't need the support under my head. I could use it if I wanted to, and you can use yours if you'd like. And maybe if you're going to stay here for a longer relaxation, you would like the prop under your head. I'll try it. Let's say I'll do 2 minutes without. I'll tell you when we have about a minute left if you want to add the head support and continue in that place. All right, so we're going to start our timing about now. As always, legs can be straight or bent. You might bring your mindful attention to the fact that this is our third fish pose, and check in with yourself about anything that you've experienced in your body, in your energy, in your emotions over the course of this practice. At this point, if you haven't been using head support and you want to add a pillow or a blanket under your head for about the last minute or so of this pose, you can do that. If you do any changes in your props or your shape, find that change. Get out any of the fidgeting or movement. Then once again, allow your body to settle into that shape. And you can stay in this pose as long as you'd like. If you've set yourself up in a place that feels pretty gentle and relaxing, you can stay for, make this your rest and stay for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You could also, if you're on a prop, bend your knees, perhaps lift your hips to simply slide the prop to the side and out of the way, and then come down for a constructive rest or a more traditional shavasana here. I'll stay in this final shape with you for about 3 more breaths. Again, stay as long as you'd like. If you are coming up to seated with me, roll to one side. Slowly, mindfully help yourself up. Find a position to end today's class. So I hope that this practice helped you find some warmth in your body, helped you find some openness, a movement out of that huddle or that inwardness that we often have in winter. If you love to practice yin yoga, please practice more with me. I've got plenty of yin practices here, and I've got other mindful yoga practices for you to try as well. Thank you for being with me today, and enjoy the rest of your day.